So in case you haven't met me yet, my name is Kim and I work with YWCA St John's. That's St John's to differentiate. I feel like we've been meeting our doppelgangers here while we've been here, which is very funny. But thank you all for being so engaged in this conversation. So we're gonna build on a little about what we've talked about over the past day or so. And I'm specifically gonna chat about pre-migration and post-migration experiences as kind of a part of being trauma-informed. I mean, I can't give a full trauma-informed training at this moment, but I think having a better idea of what LGBTQ newcomers are experiencing is a really important thing for you folks to know when you're serving them. And you've heard from Solomon, who is my lovely project partner in this work. So the project that we're doing is called Fostering Collaboration of Services for LGBTQIA+ Newcomers in Newfoundland and Labrador. Bit of a mouthful, but essentially what we're doing is trying to enhance the settlement experience of LGBTQ newcomers in the province. And we're doing that, of course, through research. We deliver direct services, a peer support group, and a mentorship program. We're also engaging stakeholders in that work as well. So thank you, Solomon, as our project partner as well. So I want to get us started just with some show of hands to these next questions. So I want you to raise your hand if you know somebody who is a newcomer to Canada. Yeah, I should see lots of hands for sure. Okay. So can you raise your hand if you know somebody who is a member of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community? I love that. Yeah. How about you raise your hand if you know somebody who is both a newcomer and part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. And raise your hand if you have served an LGBTQIA+ newcomer in your work. Awesome. All right. So you folks are really getting out there in your work and reaching folks, which is awesome to see. So I hope that what we talk about today is really useful for you. So like Laura Bell talked about yesterday with intersectionality, LGBTQ newcomers have different needs to the broader newcomer population, and they're unique needs as well, because what we're seeing is that folks are at the intersections of oppressions like racism, xenophobia, transphobia, homophobia, and it makes their settlement experience that much more challenging because they're facing that compounded discrimination. So intersectionality helps us understand how those factors impact somebody's settlement and integration experience. So what do people experience before they get to Canada? So the pre-migration experience of LGBTQ newcomers is not universal. Everybody is so different depending on the country they're coming from, what traumas they may have encountered, their age, their ability, all those sorts of things are going to make up a person's experience, right? And so it's going to vary depending from person to person. So what I'm sharing today are just some common things that I've seen in my work and that has been reinforced by research as well. So take things with a grain of salt in that everyone you're working with is going to be different. So, for example, some folks are forced to leave their country of origin due to persecution based on their gender or sexual orientation. So they may be refugees to Canada for that reason. However, any newcomer from any circumstance may also be part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. So whether you're working with a refugee, a temporary foreign worker, international student, you really have to be doing your work in the mindset of whoever is coming to my door could be an LGBTQ newcomer. And if you're serving 50 newcomers in the run of a week, you're guaranteed to be serving LGBTQ newcomers in your work. So like we talked about already, there is that myth that, oh, we don't serve LGBTQ newcomers. No one tells me that they're queer. No one's come out to me in my work. People hide these things, and we'll talk about why. So again, these are just some common things that I've seen in my work and come up through research as well. So folks do face persecution, victimization, discrimination based on their sexual orientation or gender identity in their country of origin. And again, depends on the country, and we'll take a look at some of that data. But folks are often coming with those experiences of trauma, coming from a place of, their gender or sexuality not being okay where they're coming from. And so when they're showing up at your door, it's important to know this, because a lot of LGBTQ newcomers are not going to tell you that they're part of the LGBTQ community. And so you have to be very nimble and flexible in your work. You have to leave your assumptions at the door and be ready to support folks and to have conversations around gender and sexuality if someone does bring it up to you, and to find other ways to ensure that people are still going to get the support even if they don't tell you. And so that could include things like including information in your settlement orientations, like Solomon said, having information about local LGBTQ services available at your offices. Those are some things that you can do to kind of combat that concern. There's a risk of criminalization. So in people's countries of origin, there are so many countries across the world where not only is it not socially acceptable to be part of the LGBTQ community, but there's a risk of criminalization. So there are, you may be risking imprisonment, and in some countries a death penalty as well if you are believed to be part of the LGBTQ community. So folks are coming with very real fears that are going to prevent a lot of people from discussing this with you. And so we kind of have to keep that in mind. Social isolation is something I hear from folks a lot. Obviously, being a newcomer in a country is going to be isolating in a lot of different ways, but a lot of folks don't have the support of their cultural community here. So for example, a newcomer, many other newcomers we work with may have the support of, they can go to their friend's house for dinner, who's part of their cultural community, and cook together and have a wonderful meal. That may not be something that an LGBTQ newcomer will have access to. They may not have that tie to their cultural community after coming to Canada, or before they come to Canada. And so they're already feeling isolated. They're feeling like they're an other, they're not fitting in. And so that's something that folks kind of continue to experience throughout their migration journey. And of course, especially with what I talked about with persecution, discrimination, people are feeling a lot of intense shame and guilt. So again, another reason why folks may feel uncomfortable talking about their gender or sexuality, or may feel like it's not safe to talk about these things. It's bringing up a lot of trauma, it's bringing up fear, and all of those things. I'm not sure if folks have heard of the ILGA before, but they have a database of global information relating to LGBTQ freedoms and rights. So every year they track a number of different markers of LGBTQ freedoms and rights. So we're just going to look at one of those today. We're going to take a look at the criminalization of same-sex sexual acts. And so this marker is often used as a marker of LGBTQ progress or lack thereof across the globe. So since 1990, about 52 countries have decriminalized these acts, which is a huge win. It's marking progress for the global LGBTQ community. So starting out with some good news here for sure. So in 2024, 2 jurisdictions actually decriminalized consensual same-sex sexual acts, and those were Dominica and Namibia. So we're really hoping to continue to see this trend, and this is due to the hard work of activists and LGBTQ folks across the world who are really pushing to make this happen. And so if you want to really dive deep into this data, we'll continue to talk more about it, but if you want to really dive deep, the ILGA World Database is a really, really good tool to find information not only about this particular marker, but you can take a look at what the rights and freedoms are relating to things like, freedom of expression, protection against discrimination, legal gender recognition, all of that data they track. So it's a really interesting tool to get familiarized with. Of course, there's still a lot of work left to be done and a lot of progress left to be made. So when you look at this map here, and I realize things are very tiny, so I'll verbally explain a little bit. So the countries that are in orange or red are places where same-sex sexual acts are criminalized, and that ranges from anywhere from imprisonment to a death penalty as well. So that's kind of what you're seeing here. So right now there are 60 countries that still criminalize consensual same-sex sexual acts by law. And so there's also, that's again, just one marker of freedoms, but in 13 countries as well, there are specific laws that criminalize trans people as well. And some of them are kind of vaguely defined. A lot of these laws may not explicitly state you cannot be transgender or, being transgender is illegal, but things are worded in a way that can be used to criminalize folks from the LGBTQ community, if that makes sense. So every country is going to be very different, but I wanted to give you those statistics there. So when you look at this map, you're going to notice that there is a high concentration in Africa and the Middle East. So my question for you folks, why do you think that is? And I'll take one or two people from the audience if you have any ideas of why that might be. Yes?
I think a lot of this happened like post-colonization. So Africa, if you do the history, pre-colonization was pretty accepting on cultural practices and all that. Post-colonization and the introduction of religion through a white lens has treated all those cultural aspects as further away from God. So it's more of a religious context that's used to impose those views and thoughts and processes. On Africa, I don't know so much about the Middle East.
Thank you so much, Laura Bell. And I'll take one other person.
Oui, alors je voudrais dire que la raison principale pour laquelle il y a une concentration des pays qui criminalisent encore les communautés LGBT en Afrique et au Moyen-Orient, les raisons sont essentiellement culturelles. Elles sont essentiellement culturelles parce que on a des pays qui ont subi la colonisation et donc qui ont subi un processus de déculturalisation et qui sont en train de faire un retour vers leur propre culture et qui donc n'acceptent pas un certain nombre de pratiques qu'ils considèrent à tort ou à raison comme venant d'ailleurs. Et donc, c'est la principale raison. Mais je pense aussi que votre tableau, il va davantage s'éclaircir parce qu'en réalité, on est dans un processus d'apprentissage collectif. C'est un apprentissage collectif de l'acceptation de l'autre. Et c'est un processus, évidemment, quand on dit apprentissage collectif, c'est un processus qui est lent, qui prend du temps parce qu'il va falloir convaincre les gens relativement à ce qui se passe. Donc voilà.
Thank you so much. Both of you hit the point that I was really hoping that somebody would, so I really appreciate you both sharing. Yeah, colonization has a huge impact on what we're seeing here. So when we think about, when we even think about Canada, for example, or Turtle Island, the land that we're on has been impacted by colonization as well. Two-Spirit people and Indigenous people here have had their own understandings that gender and sexuality are fluid and part of the human experience, right? And so many places across the world have those understandings as well. And the impact of colonization has brought the ideas and beliefs of settlers and those have been imposed upon so many countries around the world. And so what we're seeing is the fallout from that impact. And while we might look at this map and think, oh, we might say, oh, people from the Middle East and Africa are homophobic or transphobic. That is not the case at all. Really what I want you folks to understand is that there is no culture or country or group of people that are inherently homophobic or transphobic. That is learned. It's learned through colonization. It's imposed in policies, and it's not always an individual issue of, this group of people is homophobic, biphobic, transphobic, right? There's so many reasons why we're seeing what we're seeing. So why would people choose to come to Canada? So Canada, we like to say, oh, we're so multicultural, we're inclusive, and all those things, and we have that reputation across the world, right? And our immigration system is not perfect. I know we all know that, but there are certain things that are specific to Canada's immigration process that is a draw for a lot of people. So for example, persecution based on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity or expression, which you may see the acronym SOGI used sometimes, that is an allowable ground for a refugee claim. So a lot of people will come here to make a refugee claim on that basis, right? And we also do allow same-sex spouses and common law partners as potential candidates for sponsorship. So those are things that people really see in Canada and think, oh, okay, this is where I want to go. And of course, like Sihem talked about yesterday, the Canadian Human Rights Act protects against discrimination as well. So during migration, despite all those efforts or positive factors about Canada, there are still going to be challenges that people face. So during the migration process, and by that I mean everything from living in a refugee camp, filing a refugee claim, to getting here and starting to engage in settlement services. All of that can be very re-traumatizing and intrusive. We know that having to retell your story so many times, that is a really big stressor on people. Having to tell your story to the person working at the refugee camp, having to tell your story when you're filing a refugee claim, when you meet your settlement worker for the first time, having to talk about the discrimination you've experienced, the persecution, all of that is going to be really difficult for people and is re-traumatizing. And something I'll say as well, and I'll note that is mostly for forced migrants, but any LGBTQ newcomer who's coming from a country where non-conforming sexual orientations or gender identity are highly stigmatized or criminalized are going to have more difficulties in navigating their settlement journey, again, because they may or may not have the support of their cultural community when they get here. Post-migration experience, once people get to Canada, again, like Solomon said, a lot of folks say, this has been really positive. I've been able to explore, even if it's just internally, to think about and trying and understand what your own idea of your gender or sexuality is. That has been a really powerful experience for people. So that it has been really positive. And some folks will choose to engage with the 2S LGBTQIA plus community if they feel comfortable and as an important part of their settlement, while others may continue to hide their identity because of persistent fear. And something that is really jarring for a lot of people is that when they come here, they still may experience discrimination, so homophobia, transphobia, racism, and it may be really surprising to folks because they expect that once they get to Canada, they won't have to deal with those issues, right? So it's very much like a bubble pop kind of effect of, you have this idea and then it doesn't seem to be quite true. And as we all know, it's hard for any newcomer to find housing, employment. Again, with the intersections that folks are facing, it's that much more difficult to find those things. Can I get a show of hands? Do folks know about the healthy immigrant effect? Yeah, okay, some people. Cool. So the healthy immigrant effect essentially says that when newcomers first come to Canada, they actually have better physical and mental health than the general Canadian-born population. But what happens is, is this not? Sorry. But what happens is their health will decline after the more time they spend in Canada. And I can't remember the exact time frame, but from my personal experience, I know that folks tend to start having a difficult time about like a year or so. Like for after a year, things start getting a lot harder. Supports tend to drop off. They start to feel more alone maybe because they're not connected to as many different supports. So that's what I've observed anyway. It's a really challenging time, and the biggest factor in people's physical and mental health is actually social determinants of health. So talking about things like housing, income, employment, their experiences of racism and discrimination. So, having those experiences of transphobia or homophobia has a really profound effect on people's mental health and physical health as well. So again, we can't ignore those things when we're talking about health, especially mental health as well. The folks that we're working with really need to have service providers who understand and can recognize what they may be experiencing, and to be able to validate, these things shouldn't happen in Canada. And I'm sorry that it is happening, right? Like we really have to have that understanding. We have to know where we can refer to that is going to be an affirming experience for them. And I can speak for Newfoundland and Labrador. The services are not so plentiful, but we have to be able to have those conversations and try and navigate things with folks to find the supports that may best fit them. And lastly, I know Solomon talked about this a little bit, but I want to leave you with a little bit of context from our province. So we have a smaller population, much like other Atlantic provinces. We're not as big as cities like Montreal and Vancouver and Toronto. So we have limited diversity. I don't want to erase the fact that there is diversity here. We have incredible, diverse folks who are making up the fabric of our provinces, but we don't have those same huge cultural communities that folks may have in other parts of the country. In Newfoundland and Labrador, we don't have a gay village, or actually only very recently we have a queer community center now. So this really hinders folks' desire to stay here. So for example, I have had a lot of LGBTQ newcomers kind of come and pass through our programs who moved to those larger cities because they don't feel enough of a sense of community, even within the LGBTQ community in Newfoundland and Labrador, because of the size and also because of racism and discrimination, even within the LGBTQ community. I've heard from so many folks, in dating, they feel fetishized by the largely white population. They feel like others don't understand them when they're trying to date. So that's one thing that comes up for folks. And also when accessing services, if a doctor, for example, has negative attitudes towards people of a certain race or cultural background, that's going to impact their service as well, right? And so unfortunately, discrimination does exist in so many different parts of services that people are accessing, and so that makes things really challenging. But going back to the limited diversity and the challenges with the population, it's going to be really hard for LGBTQ newcomers to connect with each other. I see Arthur saying yes. It's really hard. Like I've had so many people come to our peer support group and say, I've never been in a room with other LGBTQ people before and been able to talk about the things that I'm experiencing. And so to be there and meet other people who are experiencing similar things and to talk about it is really, really powerful. So I encourage folks, if you are encountering LGBTQ newcomers in your work, it's important to try and make those connections. Because when we talk about mental health, for example, like we spoke about it a little yesterday about, counseling and medication, those can certainly be part of it, but social inclusion is a huge, huge part of people's mental health, especially for newcomers, and I'm sure we all know that. So finding where people feel comfortable, what kind of spaces they want to get involved in, find their people, right, is really important. So I really encourage you to reach out to organizations in your local area. Like if you work in a settlement agency and you don't know, you're not familiar with the LGBTQ supports in your area, or you don't know if maybe there are specific supports for LGBTQ newcomers, you really need to get to know them, collaborate, talk to each other, break out of that silo mentality, and so that you can be making the best referrals possible and really meeting the needs of the people that you're working with. And something that also came out through research that Solomon's done previously is that in less populated areas of the province, so in more rural areas, the chance of being outed, and do folks know what I mean when I say outed? So if someone's revealing someone else's LGBTQ identity without their consent, right? So the chances of being outed in a smaller area, honestly, even in the city, people still have concerns about being outed to, you know, the rest of their family or their settlement worker or, you know, friends or family back home. Like, people really have those concerns, but especially in less populated areas of the province, there's really that fear of that, like, small town gossip. And, you know, if I share my identity with someone or I try and seek services, everyone's going to know about it, right? So I know it's boring to talk about confidentiality and why it's so important, but really it is so, so important for this population. And not only explaining confidentiality and making sure that folks are aware of what it means, you know, are you allowed to share information with other people in your organization? Are you sharing things with folks from other organizations? Like, all of that needs to be very clearly explained, but most importantly, it needs to be followed through on. If you share information with another person that someone didn't give you consent for, it's really going to break that trust. And like that came out in Solomon's research, having negative experiences can decentivize people from coming back to access your services, right? So we want to ensure that people are having a good experience. And of course, organizational gaps exist, service gaps exist. I'm sure they do in other provinces as well. But essentially the consensus is that right now, Newfoundland and Labrador isn't really meeting the needs of LGBTQ newcomers. And so thankfully, there has been lots of progress, and you know, we're making lots of connections and referrals are happening, and we're getting people to the services they need. But it can always be improved, and so we're continuing to work on that. I don't have like a set question period, but I'm welcome to chat with you at any point today. If you're thinking about something or want to chat further, I can also be reached at my email. Always happy to talk. Yeah, hope this was helpful.